Okay, so I just want to say couple of things before we get started about this Prasadam in your stomach presentation. Um, I'm just here to give a few tips of things I've learned along the way. I'm not a medical practitioner and I did not study nutrition. I don't have any certifications in that field. So a lot of the things I'm going to give basic tips, and then I would encourage everybody to do research or, if necessary, visit a doctor that practices traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine. Um, Over the years, because I've been going to those types of practitioners for so long that they've told me things that it's like tried and tested. They've all said the same basic things. You could find it online, the same basic things. So this is more a compilation of just those like really basic things that we maybe don't even think about. Going into finer details, that's going to require a little bit more research on other people's parts if they need to. Generally, I think if you follow most of these tips, you won't have a problem. Maybe until you get a lot older. I don't know. My problems didn't show up till I was older, but I see things I could have changed when I was younger. So I just want to say that. And then someone will have to tell me, I don't know if you could see it, but I'll have to know when someone has a question. I don't know. Maybe people will have to just unmute themselves. Is that possible? They can unmute themselves and then just ask a question when they need to do so. Brihat, do you
Yeah,
think that's the best way?
we can have any way, unmuting, raising hand, or doing a chat, and I will let you know about all of them.
Okay, yeah, okay, yeah, let me know if there, I see there's already three messages in the chat, but it probably has to do with people just saying they're there or something, right?
Yes.
Okay, okay, so first, we're gonna talk about the purpose of food, and I think about this. Food consumption is meant to nourish our body and provide it with the proper energy needed for a productive life, right? So it should not drain our energy, knock us out, or create brain fog. It should be satisfying, nutritious, and invigorating. And when I say satisfying, I don't just mean it tastes good, but it actually satisfies your nutritional needs. So, which is also nutritious, but you can actually feel that satisfaction. So the question is when you read this, try and think about how often when you eat, do you feel like taking a nap? Do you feel like you can't move from the table? Do you feel like thinking is a lot more difficult? Like maybe reading Bhagavatam, forget it. It's out of the question totally after you eat breakfast. You want to think about these things because if it's true that you get knocked out, it drains your energy, creates brain fog, sometimes we just kind of accept that as normal. That yeah, that's what happens when you eat, or maybe because I was up for the morning program. I'm suddenly exhausted. I wasn't exhausted before breakfast, but suddenly I am. Sometimes we may think that being tired after breakfast just means that, oh, I finally sat down for the morning, and so I must be just tired from being up for a little while. And I've seen it happen here in Gainesville after Krishna lunch. You remember Shruti, we were sitting in the um temple room one day after lunch, and one of the devotees was like passed out cold on the table, not full body on the table. He just like put his head down and he was knocked out cold.
Yeah, I
So we're
kind of
gonna, what's that?
I stabbed him to see if he's alive.
What about the light?
I stabbed him to see if he's alive.
Oh, yeah, with a fork. Um, but yeah, and so I gave him a tip on how he could not pass out after lunch, and he tried it the next day and it worked. So we'll be talking about that, different tips, how not to pass out after you eat, how not to get brain fog, how not to lose your energy, and so on. So that's what food is supposed to do. It's supposed to keep your energy going, right? It's supposed to just like, it gives you the nutrients you need, it keeps your energy up, and it keeps you moving forward throughout the day. Um, and it should be satisfying in a way that you don't constantly want to snack on things, or that you're not looking for sugar throughout the day, right? It's supposed to have the proper nutrients in order to satisfy that. So we are going to end this presentation, and I'm going to go through these fairly quickly because it's just tips and stuff so that we have time for discussion. So we're going to go over 7 basic eating tips, ashram survival hacks, and sugar. Sugar is the big one. It's the big, especially in temples. There's always, there's no dearth of sugar in temples. Okay, so basic eating tips, I'm going to go over 7. I'm just going to show you here quickly what they are, and then we'll go into them further. So 1, don't overeat. You would think that would be obvious, but it's not. We almost always overeat because we don't know how to not overeat, right? We don't know when enough is enough, typically. Eat only when hungry, another obvious one that we tend not to follow because sometimes we may be nervous or we just think it's mealtime, so we eat. Eat balanced meals. We can go into that a little bit, but I do, again, want people to do some research. According to Ayurveda, different doshas have different foods that are good for them. And so I'm going to talk about basic balancing, not like by the dosha and you know, by age and things like that. Just some basic normal things to do when you eat a meal. Rinse. We'll go into that further. I'm going to keep that one like a cliffhanger. Then stay hydrated, eat peacefully, and eat warm foods. Okay, so tip number 1, don't overeat. You'd be surprised, this goes such a long way. We often think that, well, if I just eat a little too much, it's okay. I just like do some, you know, left side duty, just lay on my left side and let it kind of drain into the intestines and, you know, eventually it'll get digested and then maybe I won't be as hungry for dinner, you know, so we can tend to think that way. So, follow the rule of first burp. If you want to eat the proper amount of food, you want to follow this rule, and we're going to talk about this a little bit. So, according to Ayurveda, the stomach needs to be 1/4 empty for proper digestion. It needs to move that food around. And then the stomach sends a burp signal when it's 3/4 full. So you already have a signal built into your body to tell you exactly how much food you need to eat. And so that burp doesn't have to be a gigantic one. It might be just a little bit of air that comes up when you've gotten to the point. And I can say I'm guilty of this, but try not to be guilty of it. Don't shovel the food down so you could get it in quicker than you burp. You want to still chew your food really well and like sit peacefully and eat. It's not too slow. You don't want to take an hour to eat, but you don't want to take 30 seconds either. You want to just really chew your food and kind of give the proper amount of time so that you're not trying to fit more in before you, because also in temples, we run into that situation where we don't want to throw away prasadam, right? And so we just think, well, whatever's on my plate, I just got to finish eating. So you get to the first burp and you're like, well, there's only like a couple chapatis left and some sabji and I'll just finish it. It's not a big deal, but it actually makes a big difference. And I've often thought that prasadam, it really never goes to waste. If you throw it away, there's at least some other entities that will eat it. Or if it hasn't already been reheated, you can save the rest for later, even to eat as a little snack later on. And also keep in mind that if you eat too much, if you finish the rest of the food on your plate, the rest of the prasadam, and it's too much, you don't get the benefits from it anyway. So it's practically the same as throwing it away. So keep that in mind. You want to, it's more important to not get knocked out for 2 hours after you eat or not to feel your energy drained so that you can actually do more service for Krishna than it is to just, you know, toss a chapati or something, or it's a little bit of sabji, right? It's better to just keep your body in order. And then what happens is I've often figured out, or at this point, I figured out exactly how much food I eat before I burp. I actually know exactly how much. I almost never have anything left on my plate. So you'll get used to it after a while. Another thing I want to say about first burp is that if you've been overeating a lot in your life or just in the recent past, that first burp is going to come fast. It's going to come faster than you expected, and you're probably going to feel a little hungry. That's what happened to me. But I decided to stick it out for the week and see how it worked. And over time, and with the, and my, what I'm thinking might be the case is that when you've overeaten so much, your body's like, okay, look, we're sending you the burp again. Give us a break. Give us a break already. And then it works on, because there may still be undigested food in your system. And so now your stomach is kind of letting you know quicker and quicker, like give it, give it a rest. Just let us work on what's in here. And so it might come really fast the first time. Or if you haven't eaten enough recently, if you're doing a fast, or if you just like haven't been eating all of your meals properly, you've been running around too much, it might come a lot later than you would think it would. So just stick it out. Do it for a few days, see how it feels. And over time, your stomach will get to, it'll plateau. It'll get, the burp will come a little later, a little later, a little later, and then it'll level off. So don't give up hope. Even if you're hungry, let's say the first day you do it, the burp comes fast. You kind of feel like, I'm not sure if that was enough. Even if you're hungry 2 hours later, like really hungry, so eat a little something again. The point is that whatever you put in your stomach, it has to be worked through your system before the next meal. We're going to talk about that in a little bit too. And so what happens in your stomach is that the reason why your stomach needs room is because it needs to knead and squeeze that food and saturate it with digestive enzymes. So if you fill it all the way up to the top, the example I saw on one website was that if you fill a water balloon with water and then, you tie it off and then you try to squeeze it, the water's trying to figure out, it can't go anywhere except stretch out the balloon. And the thing is your stomach could be stretched to some extent, but it's in a very confined space. And so you're really putting distress on your stomach by overfilling it. So just picture it that way when you eat, and you'll see you're going to have, just doing this alone, if you're not eating loads of sugar, and we'll talk about that later, just doing this alone, you're going to feel so much more energy, and you're going to feel like you're actually getting something out of your food. Okay, any questions so far? Any questions or realizations?
I've been practicing this since you brought it up with me maybe a month ago, and it's definitely a great austerity.
Oh, yeah, is it for you in
And
austerity?
it's very much very difficult to do. But when I'm able to, it feels really good. And it feels like an achievement, feels like I'm really controlling my tongue. And when I don't do it, even pretty slightly, I notice the difference. I notice how maybe there's some indigestion or feeling of bloatedness or extra burping or whatever. It's obvious that my body is not as pleased when I go past that point.
Right. And yeah, it explains that the more you fill it up, the more burping, the more gas you have in general in your body. So what do you find austere about doing it?
Well,
when
I'm attached to eating everything that's on the plate
ah,
because I'm thinking this is my quota of enjoyment that Krishna has given me. But really, I'm the one that's given it. I've decided this is how much I'd like to enjoy today. And yeah, I'm not willing to reduce that. So I'm thinking maybe to go into it saying, okay, Krishna, I'll take as much as my stomach can handle, and I'm willing to let some of it go.
You might just, what I was saying, try to do what I was saying before, is like, try to pay attention to how much you take before you burp, and then only put that amount on your plate.
Yes.
I have a particular bowl that I use, and I fill it to a certain height if I'm only eating what's in the bowl, and I fill it a little less if there's something like a side dish. So that might be helpful too.
Yeah, definitely the serving container we use makes a big difference because I actually studied this a bit in college. Psychologically, when you have a larger plate, you put more on it because you think visually it needs to be full.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
actually advantageous to always use a smaller receptacle.
Yeah, that's one of my ashram hacks, but we'll still keep that in the list. Yeah, it's another way to do it. Because people tend to always get up for seconds anyways. Doesn't matter
Yeah.
how much was on their plate to begin with, right? There's this psychology that I've got to get more. So okay, get more, just take less the first time.
Venkatesh is laughing. All of us here, I think, are in agreement with that.
Oh yeah. Okay, so let's go on. Oh yeah, I forgot.
Oh,
I
wait,
said this
Draupadi has
already.
a question.
Oh, okay. All right, go ahead.
Hi, Bo.
Hare
Not so much,
Krishna.
not so much a question, but a comment.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I wasn't smart, and I'd often forget or intentionally choose to not eat for like a really, really long time, like up to like 28 hours or something like that.
Mhm.
And then I'd eat a really big meal because I
Mm,
was like, oh, I need to like still like eat, I guess.
right.
And I'd be in pain, like
Mhm.
really bad pain for like an hour after I ate, like every time. Like my stomach just hurt so bad because I let it like shrink and then
Right.
just like filled it like past it could handle. So
Yeah.
yeah, everything you said like made complete sense. I'm like, yeah,
Okay, good.
I don't want my stomach full. That really hurt when I
Yeah.
was younger.
It's not worth it. The trade-off's not worth it. And also just this last thing that I have up here, the nutrients are not absorbed when food cannot digest properly. It's almost a total waste to eat because it just turns into toxins. So we want to make sure that if we're trying to eat nutritious food, we actually get the nutrients out of it. Okay.
Yeah, I was very unhealthy in those days.
Yeah. Good. Well, now it's time to, now you said when you were younger, you weren't, you did what did you say? You weren't as intelligent. Now you're older, you're more intelligent. And you're taking this class. So you're going to be like Superwoman. You're going to eat this food. You're going to eat it properly. You're going to feel really good.
Yay!
So
Okay.
Nanda,
Yeah. Let me go. Hold on a second. I
we've
got to get to,
we've got
yeah.
Amrita and Janaki and Manohar now with us also.
Jai Haribo.
And Alex has a question.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, Nanda Prabhu. I'm just wondering, what's your experience, or what do you think about the that we serve it, the culture of serving each other? I have a hard time with that because it happens to me often where a devotee will serve me and I'll just I'll say a little bit and they put a lot, or they go so fast I don't get to, like, I find oftentimes I get my plate and I'm like, man, I wish I could have just made my own plate,
Right.
But then we have this culture where it's so beneficial to serve other devotees. But then when you want to clean each other's plates, though, they forget about it. But that's another
Yeah,
topic.
I think I have my own thoughts about that kind of serve out. It became part of the ISKCON culture that piling massive amounts of prasadam on someone's plate is actually a fun, good thing to do. So yes, it's part of our culture to serve each other. The point of serving someone is to serve them. And you don't serve them if you give them more than they can eat and you make them sick. So maybe we need to start changing that culture. They sometimes people say like you put your hand out to like stop them from doing and they dump the subji on your hand, like the burning hot subji. It's like there has to be some. I know that devotees are doing it with a generous heart, but we have to start teaching devotees that you should actually pay attention to the person you're serving because you're there to serve them. Service doesn't just mean dumping a tray of subji on someone's plate. Serving means you treat each person like a person. How much would you like? And then give them exactly what they ask for. So the thing about people serving you that's nice is, and I'm going to talk about, I think it's in my next slide, is that you really shouldn't stand up and move around while you eat because if you didn't get enough the first time, and this is what I've noticed is you stand up, you go to get more, you burp, and you're like, oh, does that mean I'm done? Or, and then next thing you know, you're starving. And I've had that happen. So now I've tried to do it where it's like, okay, I'm going to figure out exactly how much, I need to eat. But the purpose again of serving others would be to say, oh, would you like a little bit more? And then the person doesn't have to get up. That's what serving people prasadam should be. So maybe we could build that and start building that into our culture, maybe teaching by example. Another way you can get out of being served is to serve. You could just serve yourself a plate and just show people by example what it means. Because even if you don't say anything, if let's say people go around dumping mountains of food on everyone's plates, and then you go around and you say, how much would you like? Word is going to get around. Oh, it was so nice when Alex served. He asked me exactly how much. It was like perfect. And then it'll start word will start to spread, or however many people do it in a given temple. It could change the culture because it shouldn't be like that. I know it became, like I said, part of the culture. It's like a thing people think they're supposed to do, but it's not really actually service. When a sannyasi comes or a guru, we're really careful. Of course, we always want their remnants, right? So we give them a little extra. But just that act of like, if your guru tells you, just give me a little bit, and you give him a mountain, are you really serving? So we don't want to put the other devotees in a separate category of, well, I don't have to pay attention to them as much as I do to a sannyasi. Yes, of course, sannyasis get a lot of, they're doing a lot for us, and they're dedicating their lives. So we want to be careful, but we also don't want to put everyone else in this kind of very separate category of they don't matter as much. I don't have to give them what they ask for. It's fun and it's funny, and and then their culture is, well, you're not supposed to throw away prasadam. And that's something you can say to somebody when they're serving you, is just to say, I don't want to have to throw away the rest. And if they say, well, don't, just say, I'm trying to take care of this body that Krishna gave to me. This is on loan, and I need it to serve Krishna, and I just need to be healthy. So, but I think showing, teaching by example, just going around and being a really good server can really, when people are served properly, they talk about it. And when they're served improperly, they talk about it. So word can spread.
Nanda, we've got 45 minutes left.
Okay, no
And,
more questions. Okay, let's move
Well,
on.
Shruti does have his hand raised, but
Oh, Shruti.
I'm thinking if for some reason this goes over, which it looks like it well
Yeah.
might, we could just do another one of these.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
Shruti, what's your question?
So I've been noticing that when I do that one burp thing, even when
Yeah.
I know like the last few meals haven't been heavy, sometimes I feel like the first burp just comes way too quickly. Like because I started keeping track of it sometimes, and I'm like, okay, well, I definitely didn't eat heavy past few meals. So why did it, can we like use some judgment call in those times when like I'm starving and I didn't eat many meals, like it's like yesterday, like
You're right.
somehow
Well,
maybe there was some air stuck somewhere, I don't know.
there might have been one thing I like to do when we're going to talk about staying hydrated is you could have had some liquid in your stomach. Maybe you drank something too close to mealtime, and it
Okay.
filled your stomach a quarter of the way, and then it digested super fast, and then
Yeah, that was
you know
probably-
okay. Yeah, so we'll talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next one, eat only when hungry. That seems obvious too, right? But it's not always. So follow your stomach, not the clock, not the offering clock. In many temples, lunch is served not even practically 3 hours after breakfast was served. And the meals aren't light, and because and so what happens is like you're done with breakfast at like 9 or 9:30, and then lunch is at 12:30. And it's like not quite enough time for you to digest, but it's lunchtime and it's kind of scheduled in. And so we sit and we eat anyways. And that's when we start getting into real digestive issues. So your digestive fire needs to finish the previous meal before because it's fire. And if you have, one of the examples I saw online was that someone said, if you're halfway done cooking a pot of rice and you decide to add more raw rice to it, what's going to happen to that mixture. It's going to cook very weird, and one's going to turn to mush and the other one, so you just want to like get the cooking done. So your stomach is cooking this food. Let it finish cooking and move it through the system. So the organs, they need time to digest food, move it along, and to rest. I've also read that. It's like the organs need to rest before the next meal. So this is typically 4 to 6 hours. And so we're going to talk about some tips on how to deal with that is if you're living in a temple. It's obviously easier if, like, for example, at the Krishna House in Gainesville, it's 5 hours between meals, right? We have breakfast at 8:30 and lunch at 2. Shruti, is that 5 hours? 5.5? What is that? 5.5 hours. It's
Sorry,
5.5.
Of the mute, yeah, 5.5.
Oh, sorry, yeah, 5.5. So it's plenty of time for people to get nice and hungry before they eat. So we don't see that problem quite as much, but definitely in temples, when I lived in the Boston temple, I would save some prasadam for later. I just could not eat that soon after breakfast unless I ate a super light breakfast. But then you go back to that point where you feel like you're not getting enough to eat. So you don't want to, it could work. I think Brihat, you were experimenting a little bit with that. Eating a little lighter for breakfast.
Yes.
And then,
Yeah, that worked really well.
okay,
I would
good.
just get far less than I thought I needed at breakfast,
Mm-hmm.
and I would still have an appetite for the 12 o'clock lunch.
Okay. Now, if you feel like you're not getting enough food throughout the day by eating a very light breakfast, then you could always hold off on lunch. So, oh, whoops. Okay, maybe this is in one of my other slides. But yeah, it's you can. Oh yeah, I think this is in my ashram hack slide. Okay, let's move on. We're going to talk about this actually, like how to deal with this, the fact that the offerings are so close together. But this is another thing, like I personally, if I ate something, maybe I ate too much in one meal, or just I ate something that I couldn't digest very well. There have been times when I've had breakfast at like 9 in the morning and I don't eat again till 5 in the evening because on that particular day I couldn't digest something or something was just sitting in my stomach. And so I just know I'm like, I am not putting anything on top of this. I'm going to do whatever I can, maybe drink some hot tea, maybe drinks, like some ginger tea to try to help it along. But I refuse to eat when I feel like there's still something there. And it really makes it because you don't, in your mind, you might think, well, I got to make sure I get my 3 meals for the day. I have to make sure I get to eat. But again, it won't do you any good. It'll just make you more sick. It creates what do they call it in Ayurveda? Amla. It's like this toxins that sit in your stomach. So don't be concerned or afraid to wait several hours before, because you don't want to just look at the clock and say, well, but it's lunchtime. You want to feel what your stomach's feeling and decide whether or not lunchtime is the right time to eat or if you need to wait a few hours. Okay, tip number 3, eating balanced meals. Again, this is just going to be a quick kind of run through of what kind of composes a balanced meal. So I say dabble in learning some food combining tips, go online, read about try to figure out your Ayurvedic dosha if you need to, read about traditional Chinese medicine and how they combine foods. They're pretty much the same. They pretty much have the same basic system of how you should eat. Eat fruits alone unless they're cooked. So sometimes what they say is you can cook some apples, like you can stew some apples and add them into really well cooked oatmeal or something like that. But especially if fruits are raw, it's something that you eat alone. Combine foods for complete proteins. So there's, 9 essential amino acids, and a complete protein means that they're all there. So that might mean combining corn and beans or combining beans and rice. And then some foods are actually already complete proteins. I think tofu is a complete protein. And again, look it up. I can't remember if mung dal was or not. Maybe not, but there was something else. But this is, again, something you could go and research. What is a complete protein? And you can see what's best to combine in your meal. And I've even read that it doesn't have to be in the same meal as long as you get those complete proteins throughout the day. But you could see in all the traditions, right? Very traditional food, rice and dal, rice and beans. There's every like culture has a rice and bean dish. There's khichdi, there's, you know, rice and dal and so on. And so they kind of already, it's kind of already built into the system. But my next point here is to balance proteins and starches. You don't want to eat, you know, a mountain of rice and then a couple tablespoons of dal. You know, you want to really make sure you get a good plant foods, you know, obviously don't have as much protein as animal foods do. So if you drink milk or you eat paneer or something, you're going to get a little more protein. But in order to get the protein you need in the day, and that really depends on how active you are. If you're doing any resistance training at all, if you're going to the gym and you're lifting weights, you definitely have to eat more protein because your muscles need protein to repair. That's what muscle building is. It's the tearing of muscles, the tissue, and then repairing it. And it requires protein to do that. If you don't eat extra protein when you do weight training, even if it's light weight training, then your body will start taking it, your muscles start taking it from your other parts of your body, and you'll start to get fatigued and headachy. So you want to always make sure that you get enough. They say you cannot digest or assimilate more than 30 grams in a meal. So don't go overboard. Don't start getting these protein drinks and, you know, you can make your own kind of whole foods protein smoothie if you want to get a little extra protein in and stay kind of hydrated. And then just kind of balancing. Maybe you have a cup of dal and just a little bit of rice. You know, chapatis, like things with flour, it also has some protein in it. Potatoes have protein, broccoli has protein. So if you try to find that balance, even if you're living in a temple, Rajboga typically contains rice and dal, right? I don't think there are any Rajbogas that don't. So take a whole cup of dal, take a little bit of rice, take a chapati, you know, and just try to keep it balanced where you have, and my next point is balance moist and dry. You want to make sure that you're not eating just a meal that's completely dry. So just an example, I remember one time, I'm not going to say where or who, but these devotees cooked for a program, an outreach program, and the two preps on the menu were like a burrito and a samosa. And neither one of them was so it was like just bread. It was like a plate of bread. There was nothing soupy, there was nothing wet. And so what ends up happening is you have to drink a lot of water. And what does the water do? It puts out your fire of digestion. So you want to make sure that you've got that moist, like you have a like nice moist dal or some beans or something that you balance out the meal that way. If you have chapatis, have them with something very moist. It avoids getting vata and it gives your stomach that proper combination of kind of liquid and dry that you need in order to digest. So again, this is something I'm just giving tips. You can do a lot of research online and find these things out. What I find what I find the best is looking up traditional Chinese. I just type in TCM food combining or Ayurveda food combining, and you'll find a lot of useful information. Okay, tip number 4, rinse.
Hey, Nanda?
Oh, yes.
Alex has a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Prabhu, what do you think about potatoes? Because I've been in ISKCON temples for a year now. It seems like the #1 vegetable, potatoes everywhere, potatoes. I don't think it's that healthy. I don't know. What do you think about potatoes? Like,
they love potatoes. There's potato sabji, there's potato parathas, there's potato juice. Just kidding, there's no potato juice, but there's definitely there's like potato pakoras, but you know, it's true. I would say this, it's a lot of starch, and you do need starch in your diet, and potatoes do have some protein, and you know, there's the starch is carbs. So again, that's that balancing. If you sit down to a meal and you have rice and potatoes and chapatis, you might want to kind of tip it more in the direction of the protein. where you say I might take a little spoonful of potato subji, but I'm going to take a cup of dal. And maybe I won't even have rice, because when I cook for myself, sometimes I'll just do that. I'll make like a taco or something with tempeh, and then I'll just have a baked potato on the side. I want that little bit of carbs, especially in the summer when you need carbs for you lose a lot of electrolytes, you need to replace those carbs. So I go by what I crave. There are times when I just feel like eating so many potatoes, and there are times when I don't crave them at all. And so we got to kind of listen to your body and see what it's craving. And I don't mean sugar and pakoras and things like that, but just in the healthy food department. Am I looking for, is my body looking for greens like spinach and broccoli? Is it looking for a baked potato? Is it looking for protein? You'll start to realize, like, what am I craving? And then you could balance out your plate in that way day by day. Okay, before I go on, any other questions, Brihad?
Yes, Venkatesh
Okay.
has a question.
Okay.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare
So,
Krishna.
uh, so do you really think that keeping this protein, fat, and carbohydrate balance in the temple, like it's very difficult to make that ratio as per one body? Like each and every individual might need at least 1500 to 1800 calories per day. So how can we make that ratio in temple?
Well, I think, first of all, I can say up front, I don't know much about calorie. I never really counted a single calorie in my entire life, and I don't even know how much we're supposed to eat. I tend to think more in terms of like what we're talking about, protein, carbs, things like that, and then how much to eat. My guess, is it the case that like the temple where you're at, do they not serve dal for lunch? And do they not use chickpeas very often? It's actually not a rhetorical question. I'm just curious about your particular temple.
Yeah, they serve rice. I mean, they serve dal and they serve chickpeas here often,
Okay,
practically every meal.
okay. So chickpeas are a great source of protein. Mung dal is a great source of protein. Depending on how thick they cook the mung dal. If it's thicker, you're going to get more protein, obviously. But again, like I said, if you come down for lunch and you take like a good, maybe 12 ounces of dal or something, and you just have a little bit of rice on the side, and maybe there's some sort of vegetable that's not potatoes. I don't know if that ever happens. Then yeah, you could definitely increase your protein intake. If you have chickpeas, and if you get like a Tupperware container, you can always store, if they have some chickpeas, store for later. If you want to eat them for breakfast the next day or for dinner, an early dinner.
And I would like to, I have one more question.
Yep.
So, is it preferable to take protein powder?
There's a smoothie that I sometimes drink after I go to the gym, and the way I do protein powder or something like that is I buy in actually like a ground up whole food, like pumpkin seed powder, which has lots of protein. And I'll just add that and maybe one spoonful of like 1 tablespoon of peanut butter, and I'll put different things in that I know contain protein, and I could get a smoothie that's got about 26 grams of protein, which is just right at the edge of the limit of what you should eat in a meal. So I would suggest, even if you did do a protein drink, that it's a whole food, not those protein drinks that have a whole bunch of other garbage in them. Are we all set to move on?
Yeah, I would like to
Okay.
check one more thing.
Yeah.
Is it whey protein also is having bunch of garbage in it?
I don't know much about whey protein. I stick with hemp or pumpkin protein. So I haven't researched it much, but that's something you might want to compare and contrast online. From what I understand, whey doesn't have quite as much protein as these other products. But it's always good to, like, Whole Foods sells a hemp protein powder that you just use. I'll just use a couple tablespoons in my smoothie. And it's got a pretty good amount. And then I've seen pumpkin seed protein powder or just pumpkin seeds. Raw pumpkin seeds can be added and just blended into the smoothie. We're going to talk about smoothies in a little bit too.
Do you want to take more questions now? Alex has something.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. This is really important. Things I've been wondering for a while.
Yeah.
Okay, now rice, white basmati rice every day, all the time. Is this good for me or is this bad? Like,
I mean, I don't eat rice every day. It's a starch. It's like, and again, you can go back and forth if you need to. I don't know if you're able to cook there, but sometimes I'll go back and forth between brown and white rice. But I can honestly say it's kind of a rare day when I eat rice. I eat it every once in a while, but not every day. I kind of play around with my starches. I'll eat a baked potato one day, I might eat rice on another day. Or corn tortillas. Sometimes I'll just make tacos with corn tortillas. I know that's a little harder in the temple if you're not able to cook. But I would say if they do a lot with potatoes, you might want to go back and forth. One day rice, one day potatoes. But get a little bit of starch in there somehow. Because it's carbs also give you energy, just not overdoing it.
so rice and potatoes are kind of on the same category. So you're saying.
Potatoes have more protein in them than rice does. And I'm sure there's different nutrients in potatoes, especially if you literally take yeah, basmati rice has been stripped of some things. A potato in a sabji hasn't, except the peel, they peel them. So it is a little bit more, I would say. It's not that basmati rice isn't a whole food, but it's definitely stripped of some things.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Right.
Okay, should I go on, Brihad?
Please.
Okay. So rinse, this is just a quick tip. My Ayurvedic doctor told me years ago, rinse your mouth with cold water after eating. So this is like, it refreshes and cleanses your palate and it helps control the desire to keep eating. That doesn't mean you have to go on the run right after you eat. It just means like you finish eating, you go rinse out your mouth and then you could sit and digest and talk and do whatever, but you don't still have that taste in your mouth of the food and you're kind of craving more. It helps your brain kind of think, okay, well, we're done with this aspect of our day. We're done with eating this meal. And so that could be very helpful for getting you to not contemplate getting up and eating more prasadam. And that one's a quick tip, but it's helped me a lot. When he told me to do that, it helped me a lot. Okay, tip 5, stay hydrated. Maintain hydration throughout the day between meals. You do not want to be taking large amounts of beverage while you're eating. In fact, if you stay hydrated throughout the day between meals, you don't really need to drink much of anything unless you're eating a really dry meal. Okay, so this is how hydration helps digestion. It assists in flushing waste through urine. It forms saliva. And fat, protein, and carbohydrate nutrients that fuel our bodies are metabolized and transported by water in the blood. So we know, what did they say? The body is like 73% water. So sometimes just even that indigestion and the bloating just comes from just lack of hydration. And hydration doesn't just mean water. And according to Ayurveda and traditional Chinese medicine, your beverages should be at most room temperature, if not warm. It's somehow the body absorbs it better when it's warm. When it's ice cold, it's not good for digestion and it doesn't absorb as easily. So what I do is if I'm really thirsty before I eat, I'll drink a bunch of liquid, whether it's coconut water or whatever. And then I will wait until my stomach feels hungry again before I eat. And that's taken up to 45 minutes before. So even though I was hungry and I was about to get ready to eat, I always think to myself, hydrate first if you feel thirsty. And if that means putting off your meal for a little bit, then put off the meal because it fills your stomach the same as, food does. Hold on, I think. Yeah. So beverages take up room in the stomach. your digestion is fire and liquids can put out the fire. So if you're eating a meal and then you drink a whole bunch of water afterwards, it can put out that fire and you get indigestion. So you want, if you're eating a drier meal, they say you could drink a little bit during the meal if it helps create a moist mixture in your stomach. It's kind of has to be like slop in your stomach. And that's the easiest way. If it's too dry, it's very difficult to digest. If you're too filled with liquid, it's also difficult to digest. So you want a good balance.
Can I share something, Nanda?
Yeah.
I've heard that drinking CCFT is okay during a meal. CCF
that?
is cumin, coriander,
Oh.
fennel tea. I was told by one Ayurvedic practitioner that's the only thing that you can drink during a meal.
Yeah, and that's again, it's worth researching. I've read different things. I try my best, especially in Florida. It's so difficult to stay hydrated. It's like it's a full-time job practically in the summer. But I try to make sure, like when I'm cooking breakfast, I drink probably almost a liter of water so that by the time I sit down, I don't feel the need to drink while I'm eating. And because I always balance out my food with like moist and dry things, like lots of dal on my rice or whatever, I never feel that need to drink something during my meal. But I think it kind of goes back to the point, what you're saying about this tea. Yeah, because that's a digestive tea. But even then, you don't want to dump it. You don't want to fill up your stomach with it and then eat, and you don't want to gulp it down while you're eating. Taking little sips of that tea can help with digestion. But if you forgot to stay hydrated before your meal. But best is try to just, they say like when you first wake up in the morning, drink a lot of water. Just get that flushed through your system. And then if you can, try to drink some more beverage before, like an hour before you eat. And then wait until you're digested after you're done eating. I wait at least an hour, if not more, before I start drinking more liquid. How much time do we have left, Prihat?
We have 20 minutes.
Oh, okay, that's not bad.
No more questions right now, it
Okay.
appears.
Okay. Hydration is pretty basic. Eat peacefully. Eat when you have time to sit and digest. Don't eat on the run. Don't eat and go running out the door. Don't eat while you're standing and so on. So we're going to say that. Give yourself 15 minutes minimum to sit and digest. Now, that's minimum. Maximum shouldn't be 5 hours. You want to find a balance of like, if you can't stand up after 15 minutes of sitting and digesting because your stomach is like pulling you back down like a bowling ball, you've done something wrong. So just give yourself time to digest. Don't stand while eating. It's always better to sit down while you eat. It's like you're putting kind of stress on the body. The body's should be just peaceful and relaxed. Don't argue, cry, debate, or get into a fist fight while eating. I know it happens sometimes. Fist fights break out in the prasadam room. Just don't do it. Don't argue. Yeah, don't do any of this stuff while you're eating. Eating should be peaceful. It should be peaceful conversation. If an argument starts, you could just say to somebody, hey, why don't we just talk about this when we're done eating? And then you could sit and eat in awkward silence after you just started an argument and didn't finish it. But still, if you know that you want to just kind of avoid those things, it's best just to try to have conversation that doesn't end up turning into a raging debate. Don't bust out the nunchucks while you're eating. Don't eat in a rush. We were just talking about that. Let's see if there's another one. Yeah. Sometimes I see people say things like, oh, I've got this meeting. I've got to meet with someone one-on-one. I'll just bring my lunch with me. It never works. So I've had a couple people tell me like, oh, I'm just going to eat while we talk. And I'm always thinking, no, you're not. As soon as we start talking, you're definitely going to stop eating because it's another like activity. You're actually sitting there, you're talking, you're feeling emotions. It's not the time you just sit and eat something. So I've seen it a few times where somebody realized it was a bad idea. Just if you can't eat If you can't eat before the meeting, then maybe just wait until afterwards or try to just come to the meeting a little bit later. If your day's been really hectic and you haven't had time to eat, then just try to either ask for a little extra time. And if you can't do that, then just eat right after the meeting. But it's definitely not recommended. You should really be focused on the conversation or the meeting when you're actually in it.
Nanda, Draupadi
Yep.
has a comment or question.
Okay.
Hi, Bo.
Hare Krishna.
How do I English this? Yeah. My question is like, I don't know. So I work in the morning, so I'm thinking sometimes I get up really late, and sometimes it's like if I don't eat in a rush, I'm not gonna eat. So is it healthier to just like eat in a rush or just like not eat for a while? Because like
It's-
I go to work at like 8, so the next time I could eat is like not 11, 1. So that yeah, that's my kind
When
of
you
thing.
say you go to work, you mean like you have a job, or are you talking about just doing your daily service?
Like a job.
Oh, okay. I would just arrange your schedule so that you can eat
Yeah. Well,
properly,
yeah,
whatever
usually,
that means.
but what about those like random situations where you woke up half an hour late?
Oh, well, I don't, I think it's better to hold off because if you do eat in a rush, it's going to be wasted anyways, if you can't digest it. Or something you could do if you don't have time, eat an apple to hold you over, eat, some sort of thing that's like, doesn't take that long to eat, or you could bring with you or something that will hold you over, just even a handful of nuts. Nuts have protein, they have oils in them, and it could kind of at least make you full enough that when it is time to eat, you've digested them, but you're not starving until it's time to eat. I
Okay.
mean, just try different things. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. My mom usually tosses me an apple on my way out.
Okay. Okay, good. Do you always catch it?
Nope.
Okay, any other questions before we move on?
That is all.
Okay. Okay, this is the last tip, and then we're gonna go into a couple of other things. We might be able to get it all done because we're talking along the way. Eat warm cooked foods, mostly. So foods that are cold and raw are difficult to digest. And so then that question comes up, well, what about when it's really hot outside or from predominantly pitta and so on, right? So predominant pitta can have some raw food, but again, not in excess. Digestion is basically cooking. And when you eat cooked foods, you've already helped the stomach along. So people do talk about sometimes, well, cooking kills the enzymes. I've heard that a lot, but I think those enzymes are there in raw food because if you eat it raw, Krishna knows that you're going to have a really hard time. So he throws some enzymes in there. If it's cooked and you kill the enzymes, it doesn't matter because it's easier to digest anyways. So yeah, digestion is fire, it's heat, it's cooking. And so eating with the seasons, some places only have like 2 seasons, like hot and cold. But when you're up further north, you get winter, spring, summer, fall. And so you kind of want to eat with the seasons in the sense that it's really not a good idea. For example, during the summer in Florida, I can drink, a gigantic thing of coconut water practically every day. During the winter, I can't even touch it. I just don't even, it just makes my stomach turn to think about it. Because in the winter, I'm cold and my body wants warm things. And so I drink a lot of teas in the wintertime and I eat a lot of hot soups. And so you want to go with that. You don't want to just say, well, coconut water is healthy for you, so all year long I'm going to drink it. They have their foods have their seasons. There's a reason why coconuts grow in the tropics because it provides you with electrolytes that you need when it's a bazillion degrees outside, like it has been down here. But then when it gets a little cooler outside, yeah, you may not sweat as much, you may not need as much hydration, you may not lose as much electrolytes, and you may not need your body to cool down at all. And so you're going to be drinking those warm teas and eating, hot soups and things like that. So try to stick with the seasons, not just what nutrition is in a particular type of food. Okay, I want to talk about fasting a little bit. If this is necessary. If you if you do the first burp and you combine your food properly and you stay hydrated, there's a chance you won't really need to ever fast. You'll just always feel good. This kind of eating this way, eating small amounts of food, like only filling your stomach 3/4 full, staying hydrated, it's going to keep your fire of digestion super strong. And you won't really feel that need to kind of cleanse out stuff that's sitting there because stuff won't be sitting in there. That doesn't mean you never should fast. I mean, sometimes people just like to clear out the system anyways. I think stuff does get stuck in there. So I would say this is my take on fasting. If you fast, you see like in traditional Ayurvedic fast, they eat khichdi, right? They'll eat a really simple, not spicy, just a simple, well-cooked khichdi with well-cooked vegetables. Very easy to digest. Same thing with beverages. Drinking warm beverages helps wash things through the system. And again, mostly avoid cold raw foods. You might eat an apple or something, or you might drink an apple juice or something like that. But stay hydrated also. If you're fasting, really stay hydrated. And even with electrolytes, just because you're fasting doesn't mean you don't need liquids. Let's see. Yeah, and then I just want to talk really quick about this fruits, juices, and smoothies. Oftentimes people think that smoothies 3 times a day are the best way to go when they're fasting, right? But they're filled with sugar. The fruits are filled with sugar. It's cold. Smoothies are often frozen, right? Smoothies tend to be blended frozen fruits. That's very hard in the digestion. And what my Ayurvedic doctor told me years ago is that, you know, if you eat too much fruit, which has a lot of sugar, it starts to get frothy in your stomach. You're not really washing things through and keeping that liquid moving through your system. It starts to froth up. So if you're drinking a lot of frozen, these like really cold smoothies, and it's mostly just fruit and it's just very sugary, it's not the best way to fast. The best way to fast is if you're going to do like maybe fresh pressed fruits and veggie juices, do it at room temperature. That can help get some nutrients in your system. Don't drink them super cold. My Ayurvedic doctor also told me if let's say you're really thirsty, the only thing someone has for you is refrigerated water. He said that when you drink it, just swish it around in your mouth a little to warm it up before you swallow it. So always kind of getting that at least room temperature or mouth temperature beverages into your system, you're going to hydrate better. But fasting, you know, to do for a couple of days, if you've been overeating, it's been rich food or something, just try to imagine. Another thing my Ayurvedic doctor told me, he's very smart actually, is that you have to picture what's going on in your system and how it relates to food. So for example, when you're sick in the winter, right, you have a lot of mucus. And mucus and phlegm, it's very cold, it's thick, it's white. So he told me that avoid cold, thick, white things, ice cream, yogurt, sour cream, you just avoid that. And you drink hot, thin soups to kind of thin out that mucus. So it's the same thing. If you feel like stuff is stuck in your system, what's going to help wash it through? If you've been eating oily foods, how do you wash a pot, you know, that's had grease in it? Well, not everybody knows how to wash a pot that's had grease in it. That's another whole class for temples. But how do you wash a pot, right? It's like with hot water. That's how you get grease to run down a drain. You run really hot water down. So if you're trying to wash toxins out of your system and do a little spring cleaning, you want to drink like kind of warm, maybe ginger, unless you're too pitta. You drink maybe some ginger tea. You want to drink room temperature fruit and vegetable juices, not too much fruit juice because that's also a lot of sugar. But just like veggie juices, celery juice is a really, really good nutritious juice to drink to stay hydrated and to kind of get some nutrients into your system. So the best kind of fasts are doing it this way. Just warm, kind of liquidy, easy to digest foods, give your digestion a break. We often think that fruits are the lighter food, but they're actually not necessarily. They're cold, they're sugary. If they're raw, unless you're cooking them, like if you make stewed apples or something with lots of warming spices like cinnamon, cardamom, and fennel, and so on. They have these fruit stews that they make in traditional Chinese medicine, where they'll put like kind of, they'll boil it with orange peel and ginger and some cinnamon. And it helps really with coughs and things like that. But I'd say if you're fasting, try to follow that kind of system. Hot liquids, well cooked, easy to digest foods, just in small amounts, just to kind of keep that fire, just getting that fire working back up again. So if you feel like, okay, I've waited till all the food is digested from my stomach, but I still feel like I need a little break, then just eat smaller, easy to digest meals, maybe just some khichdi for a few days. And then just slowly introduce food back in. Okay, any questions about this?
Yes,
Okay,
Alex.
Well, I have a question. I don't know how much about this it is. It's about fruits. So, most meals at a temple, they'll have some fruit, like a bowl of fruits there, like fruit salad. But then
Yeah.
earlier you said we shouldn't mix, like we should have fruits on their own. So
yeah.
I heard like you should have fruits before the rest, but are you saying just don't touch that bowl, or like what, grab some for later when it like would,
Yeah, one thing I read online was to give it at least a half hour. If you're gonna eat some raw fruits, eat it a half hour before your meal.
But it all
Um,
gets served at the same time.
yeah, that's when my ashram hacks is gonna come in. You gotta learn the art of setting aside. Bring a Tupperware container to the meal. Put some fruits in the Tupperware and save it for later to maybe have as a snack in the evening, or if you are really hungry between meals, you could just have that as something to hold on to for later. You don't have to eat everything they give you at breakfast or at lunch or whatever. I mean, not right all at once.
So fruits in the evening are good.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's a good little snack to have if they say to at least give yourself a couple of hours to digest before bed. Like I don't usually eat past 5, latest 6 o'clock. And so, but fruits, that's different. It's a lot easier to digest. Let's say you've had dinner at 4 for some reason and you're hungry at 6 and you want to just have some fruits so you don't go to bed hungry, it could come in very handy.
but the sugar can keep you up, don't you think?
Not if you eat the proper amount. So you're not eating like a 12-ounce, you're not drinking like a 12-ounce smoothie or something, right? Just loaded with sugar. Just eating an apple, like a couple pieces of apple. Actually, you know what's really delicious is apple wedges with peanut butter. You get a little protein in there, you got the moisture from the apple. That's a very delicious snack. And so that protein can balance out the sugar that's in the apple. How it digest, I don't know. I've never had trouble digesting it. Maybe you're not supposed to mix the two. Maybe it's because I grew up with it. But yeah, I think if you're on the up, if your digestion is on the up, if you're really, really digesting things well and you're not overeating, that's not sugar overload to have a piece of fruit. The only time I've been knocked out by even just eating a piece of fruit was when I was consistently overeating and I didn't have my digestion in order. And then like I could eat one, piece of dried fig and it would knock me out. After I got my eating in order and I started only eating, 3/4 amount, filling up my stomach 3/4, it didn't affect me that way anymore. But in general, I don't have a sweet tooth, so I don't eat like gigantic pieces of cake and scoops of halva and stuff like that. But we need sugar. We're going to talk about sugar, and probably we don't have enough time to talk about it today. What time is it, Briha?
It's 4 minutes till 7.
Oh, okay. Well, we
So,
got through the basic eating
yeah.
tips. Then, I don't know. The last 2 subject matters are ashram hacks and sugar. I don't think it'll take over an hour to do that. It's only a few slides. It's not as long as the basic eating tips. So do you want to just do it at another meeting and
Yeah,
just
we
leave a
can.
lot of time for discussion, or do you want to finish
Yeah.
today?
No, I think it's better that we do it next time and
Okay.
just meet at the regular time.
Okay.
And
Let's see. Okay, yeah, ashram hacks
yeah.
is next. Yep. Okay. So we have couple minutes left. Are any last questions? Any last minute questions before our next session or before we end today?
Venkatesh has something.
Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
So,
Krishna.
what is this intermediate fasting, and like those will not help? Like I have heard so many fasting, so many types of fasting that we have. So intermediate fasting will help in some way, and like bulking, and some fastings will help to become lean. So like, is it really not necessary if we follow as you said?
I don't know. I've been following. Okay, so one thing is protein. I know this protein burns more calories. Even though I've never counted a calorie in my life, I remember reading that. If you have, of course, you don't want to overdo protein because then it's hard on your kidneys. But if you eat a lot of starchy food, it doesn't satisfy your hunger as well, at least not as long, and it doesn't burn as much calories. And so if you eat the proper amount, you don't overeat, you eat foods that you can digest, which you have to figure out for yourself. Like I figured out I was lactose intolerant. I cannot do dairy. I tried all different ways. It just doesn't work. So if you figure all that out and you're getting proper exercise every day, going for a walk every day, or doing some weight training, resistance training, whatever, even if that means doing a few push-ups in the ashram, and you eat the proper amount of protein, I don't know. I just think your fire stays pretty good and you burn calories. The muscles burn calories. The protein burns calories. I'm not sure if intermittent fasting is necessary. But I'm not saying it's not necessary. I just eat when I'm hungry, and I don't eat when I'm not hungry, and I try not to overeat, and I eat foods that I know I can digest, and I add more protein when I'm craving it, and I add more starch when I'm craving it. And just keeping that balance, I don't feel like I ever need to fast. And even if I do fast, all that means is, for me, I guess I'll skip dinner tonight. That's if I've eaten like a heavy lunch and kind of late, or it's like a lunch that's very filling, even if I don't overeat, I may end up going to bed without eating dinner. So I don't think it has to be scheduled. I think you should really just go by this is my opinion. I could be wrong, but I think what works for me is just going by what my stomach's telling me at the time. Sometimes I just feel like drinking a soup broth. The other day, I think I was eating too much peanut butter and I think it was getting stuck in my system. So then I was really craving like a miso broth, and I just made some, and it felt so good to drink that hot kind of like warming broth. And so I just go by what I kind of know is going on in my system.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
Anyone else, Brihad? Anything in the comments?
Well, I have a question, but isn't it time?
How about we officially end it
Mhm.
and thank everyone for coming, and maybe we can take a few more minutes for questions if anyone wants to stay.
Okay. All right. Let me, okay, how do I get back to Zoom? Oh, share, is it still sharing the screen?
No, I stopped it.
Okay, and then where is everybody? Oh, there you are. Okay. Yeah, does anybody else want to stay and ask any more questions for a couple more minutes?
Alex had a question.
Okay.
So anyone else who needs to go, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us and such things.
Yeah, I was just last question. I was just thinking, I've heard that your digestive fire is stronger like in the middle of the day, like lunch
Yeah.
or something. So should we not organize our life in a way that we eat bigger lunch at that time?
I've thought about this a little bit. Often as Hare Krishnas, we've already been awake for 5 hours by the time we have breakfast typically. And I think when And I think that helps our digestion. I think a lot of people get out of bed around 6 and they eat breakfast an hour later. You know, so I don't know. When I cook breakfast here in the ashram, I make sure there's always a protein and some sort of starch or something to go with it, or some vegetable. And they really plow through it. I think it helps them when they go out onto campus to serve, which is very intense in the fall and the spring. It's very helpful for them. So I don't know, if I get up at 4 in the morning and I don't eat until 9, that's kind of midday for me. So I have no problem eating that. Maybe on the weekends, still, even on the weekends, I wake up, I want to wake the Didis, I want to chant my rounds. I might not eat breakfast for 3 hours after I wake up. But still, sometimes I just feel like, well, I guess I'll just have some oatmeal. If I want to eat, something really simple, easy to digest. But I think, yeah, the midday meal is supposed to be the biggest. That doesn't always match what's served out for breakfast. But again, I guess we'll talk about the ashram hacks next time. You may just be very selective with what's for breakfast, or you may request the temple provide some oatmeal with breakfast, or you get some instant oatmeal packs, something that's healthy, that's not loaded with sugar. Or just quick oats. I mean, God, minute oats, you could just put them in hot water, just add some boiling water to them and they're edible. In fact, in the summertime, sometimes I'll just soak quick oats. I'll blend up some pumpkin seeds to make a pumpkin seed milk. And then I'll soak some dried fruits and oats in it, and I'll just have that for breakfast. Or chia, you could do chia. I could think there's little things you could still do while you're in the ashram.
Thank you.
Mhm. Shruti, you got any questions?
Now I know everything.
Okay, good. Not yet. You don't know everything because we didn't finish yet.
I know that's it.
What?
I know that too.
Thank you, Nanda.
Okay, yeah, you're welcome. Thanks everybody for joining. Manohar, where's your face? Krishna. Anyway,
know-
okay.
We should make t-shirts that say first burp on them. First burp club.
That says first burp, not first fart.
Yeah. Exactly. It's actually true.
It's true
It's
story.
actually true. Yeah. Okay. So, Rihad, I'll just text you about when we could do the next one.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna, everybody.
So much.
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna, you're welcome. Yeah. Hare
Good
Krishna.
digestion, ki jai.
Jai.
Nanda,
Bhakti
Nanda.
ki jai. Yeah.
Was the peanut butter Jif peanut butter?
What?
Was the peanut butter you had Jif peanut butter?
Oh, it wasn't that garbage that you showed me the other day in the ashram. God damn it, that we threw in the garbage. She had the Jiffy hydrogenated, sugar-loaded peanut butter, so she didn't have to stir it.
She
You get
literally
this?
threw it away as soon as she saw it.
I threw it away. I'll pay you back. I'll pay you back the $1 that it costs for Jiffy peanut butter. Yeah, it was. I just eat peanuts and at most salt as an added ingredient. Okay, Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Yeah.